Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our weekly update. Before I begin, I'd like to recognize the incident that happened over the weekend at the T&T supermarket. Racist, hurtful, and divisive comments like these have absolutely no place in our city and are frankly appalling. We pride ourselves on our diversity. It's what makes our city one of the best places in the world to live in. To those who seek to divide us, I send a strong message that you are not welcome in Mississauga. As we work to make face coverings mandatory in all our indoor public spaces, I ask that residents continue to be kind, considerate, respectful, and think of others. Today, I am joined by Dr. Lawrence Lowe, our Medical Officer of Health here at the Region of Peel, and our Chief of Police, Chief Nish Duriappa, and Tim Lindsay, our Acting Director of Emergency Management here at the City of Mississauga. We continue to be in a good position here in Mississauga, and we're working to reopen our economy and get life back to the new normal. Cases continue to decline, with an average of 11 cases reported here in Mississauga over the past week. We currently have only 146 cases active in Mississauga, and this is no small feat. We are where we are today because of you. While we celebrate this milestone, enjoy the summer and the work to reopen the economy, we can't lose sight of all the hard work it has taken to get here. There will be a resurgence of COVID-19 this fall. There has not been a pandemic in world's history that there hasn't been a second wave. As leaders, it is our job to change behavior and reduce the severity of the second wave. Our businesses and our people can't afford to do this again. And that's why we're taking actions as a city to not only keep our people safe, but to help our economy and our businesses on the road to recovery. Yesterday, Council met virtually for the 14th time since the onset of this pandemic. First and foremost, we acted on the advice of our Chief Medical Officer of Health by passing a bylaw to make face coverings mandatory in all indoor public spaces in Mississauga. This will go into effect tomorrow, Friday, July 10th. We are joining cities from across the GTHA, including Toronto, Brampton, Caledon, and the Durham region, and many others, in implementing this preventative measure to keep our residents safe. As I've said from day one, we need a consistent regional approach. The last thing we want to do is confuse residents and businesses. Mandatory face coverings is something that Mississaugan residents have been asking for, and for the most part, many of them, including many businesses, are already doing. Starting this Friday, Mississauga residents are expected to wear a face covering such as a non-medical face mask, a scarf, a bandana, or neck gaiter in indoor public spaces such as malls and retail stores, city facilities, supermarkets, grocery stores, convenience stores, places of worship other than when taking communion, indoor recreational facilities, libraries, banquet halls, convention centers, stadiums, movie theaters, concert venues, on transit, in taxis, Ubers, Lyfts, and many more. Why are we doing this? To keep you safe and to prevent a large second wave from occurring in the fall. We realize that there are many in our community, including people with medical conditions, those who are unable to remove a face covering without assistance, and children under the age of 2 who can't wear masks and will be exempt from this requirement. Education is always our preferred option, but if necessary, we will start enforcing next week with violators facing steep fines. We recognize that this is a difficult bylaw to enforce, but it is our hope that people will do the right thing for their family, for their friends, and for their neighbours. We have many other bylaws here in Mississauga, such as smoking outside buildings, walking your dog on a leash, that are equally difficult to enforce and have been very successful in changing and modifying behaviours. The onus will both be on residents and businesses to make this work. To report non-compliance, call 311, and we will have a bylaw officer investigate. So please, wear a mask, wear a face covering so you don't spread the virus unknowingly to others. My mask protects you from me, and your mask protects me from you. Let's not make this into a divisive issue. It is the right thing to do. To help people, protect those with compromised immune systems, to allow more businesses to reopen, and to allow our economy to thrive once again. And at the same time, we know that masks aren't the catch-all solution to fighting COVID-19. Please continue to keep a safe physical distance of 2 meters or 6 feet. Wear a mask where it's not possible, including outside. Wash your hands often and get tested when appropriate. Until a vaccine is developed, this will be our new way of life, and we all must adjust. And we can't get complacent. When you leave your house, don't forget your keys, your wallet, and your mask. I know they're uncomfortable and awkward, but I think we can all agree it is far better than getting the virus or knowingly giving it to someone else. So let's continue to be kind and considerate, think of others, and fight this as Team Mississauga. At Council yesterday, we also addressed another important issue, one that I'm starting to sound like a bit of a broken record on, I understand, and that's emergency funding for cities to help us deal with our mounting losses, our operational deficits as a result of this pandemic. The federal and the provincial governments have provided financial relief to almost every sector in the economy to keep our country running to the tune of $150 billion plus and counting. Throughout this pandemic, cities have continued to provide essential services despite the growing financial pressures. Services our residents rely on every day: transit, fire, public health, police, building permit approval, housing shelters, and so much more, all of which are at risk of funding cuts if municipalities do not receive assistance from other levels of government. Cities cannot and should not be able to run deficits. This just kicks the can further down the road and will eventually catch up with the taxpayer. Given the current environment, we know it's unfair to explore drastic property hike measures to cover our operating losses. I've spoken countless times to the Premier, the Ministers of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and the Deputy Prime Minister. They understand the issues we face. I thank the Premier, in fact, to being our champion, to going to bat for cities, and bringing together the other First Ministers in other provinces. We need a good deal for cities. Earlier this week, the large urban mayors from right across the province stood united with our message: cities can't wait any longer. Our losses here in Mississauga are very real. They stand at $60 million now and could grow to $100 million by the end of the year. And this is why we passed a resolution at Council yesterday urging the provincial and the federal levels of government to provide immediate financial assistance, to quickly approve federal infrastructure funding applications, and to develop new stimulus funding programs that will address the growing fiscal burden faced by municipalities. If we don't address this now, it will end up impacting our service levels and ultimately hurting people. We also continue to do what we can as a city to make it easier on businesses to get back on their feet and operate in the new normal. We need to cut red tape and be more nimble as cities, and especially in this changing environment. And this is why we approved a bylaw that will allow outdoor restaurants and bars to temporarily expand their patios onto streets, parking lots, and onto public and private property. We've also waived several fees and noise restrictions that would usually accompany such expansions. Restaurants and bars can now easily apply for expansions online, and I ask that landlords and businesses to work on this together. We're making it easier to do business in Mississauga. Amidst this pandemic, we continue to build cities for people and to help our residents travel safely and comfortably around our city. Over the past few months, I'm pleased that we've seen cycling increase as much as 60%. We will continue to expand long and short-term options for cyclists and pedestrians to allow for safe physical distancing with the implementation of our new active transportation framework. This summer, residents can look forward to quiet streets that limit vehicle traffic, temporary road closures that provide more space for cyclists and pedestrians, and almost 18 kilometers of new separated bike lanes that will be installed by the end of the year. This will help provide residents with more options to get active and to cycle around our city comfortably, while providing relief from our busy sidewalks, our multi-use trails, and enhancing access to local amenities. And with that, I will now turn it over to our Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Lawrence Lowe, to provide us with a brief update on Peel's response to the virus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good morning. As of this morning, Peel Public Health has investigated 2,797 cases of COVID-19 in the City of Mississauga. Among these, 2,431 cases have recovered, 146 are active, and 220 have sadly passed away. Many of the lives lost were in long-term care settings, significantly due to the challenges that some homes in that sector have had before the pandemic even arrived. We certainly mourn with those who have passed throughout our community and their families, and all impacted by this disease. Besides those tragedies, though, I firmly believe that overall, we have and continue to see success in our response against COVID-19 here in Mississauga and in Peel. This success is echoed equally throughout our great province and across our country. We now know the keys to our success as we move forward into a new normal. One key to our success was how our community came together to change the way we interact. First, you stayed home, we all stayed home when it counted. Then, as we reopened, we learned to stick to the core 4 behaviors. 2 meters of physical distancing with people outside of our social circle, frequent hand washing, wearing a non-medical mask where distancing is difficult, and staying home and getting tested if sick. Every resident, every day, everywhere, doing the right thing. Every owner or operator of venues putting precautions in place to allow staff and visitors to do the right thing. Doing the core 4 will help to stop transmission in the first instance and encourage us to continue exiting from the first wave. It is for this reason that I was pleased to provide advice around a masking requirement, which I'm glad that all 3 of Peel's local municipalities have taken up and will be coming into effect in the coming days. The evolving science had already pointed us towards a strong recommendation to mask where distancing was not possible. The new requirement responds to requests of businesses and residents for clarity and consistency in the application of this important behavior. As we move towards mandatory masking, however, I also remind residents that we must remain kind, recognizing that there are people in our community who cannot wear masks for whatever reason. Stigma and discrimination has been a challenge throughout this pandemic, and it is not something that we want to see around the issue of masking any more than we have around some of the other issues that have arisen in the past. So being kind and being respectful and masking where distancing is not possible remains one crucial part of the core 4 behaviors, and taking that seriously along with the other behaviors will get to our goal of 0 daily new cases. Another key to our success has been contact tracing. The tireless work of my team at Peel Public Health, together with local public health units across the province, bought the healthcare and community time to prepare. What some are calling 2 lost months were in fact months where meticulous contact tracing and outbreak investigation staved off the establishment of community transmission until mid-March, under the significant volume of new cases detected in returning travelers from the United States. Even since, however, the skilled and dedicated staff in public health have overcome challenges of our system and technology and have helped to stamp out transmission where it has been occurring. That work is another reason why our picture of the pandemic looks like it does today. I'm excited to announce that Peel Public Health, working closely with the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, will be one of the first health units in the province to go live on a new provincial case and contact management solution. This new electronic solution promises to build on our successes in contact tracing and streamline our processes to allow quicker action on positive cases and data reporting. For any second wave that may arise, and as we exit the first wave, it is a game changer. Thus, as we build on success, I encourage you to do the same. Continue to practice the core 4 behaviors. We will take our response to the next level to respond where transmission does occur, but together, doing this together, we will see the end of COVID-19 and continue to emerge safely into a brighter day. Thank you, and I'll pass it back to Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe. In addition to the health impacts of COVID-19, we have seen several other safety concerns arise, including reckless speeding on our roads and unfortunate interactions between police and racialized communities that have resulted in the calls to address systemic racism and police accountability. With that, I'd like now to invite Chief Nish Duriappa to provide us with an update on Peel Police's efforts to work with the community to keep us safe during these challenging times. Chief?
Thank you, Your Worship. And we want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to our public and the community that we serve on behalf of Peel Regional Police and the 3,100 members of the organization. We're very pleased to be able to say that our collaborative efforts with the City of Mississauga, with Her Worship and the region of Peel have been very critical over the last several weeks and the several months. And I'd like to first acknowledge that there has been many factors geopolitically, locally, internationally, and right here in Peel region that have brought to the forefront police interactions and with the public. I want to assure you that on behalf of our membership, who we know on a daily basis commit and have taken an oath to serve this community, we continue to uphold the needs of our community at the forefront. And what we have been doing as an organization in the last several weeks have been committing to doing meaningful listening and dialogue with the public through the mechanisms of town halls, virtual meetings, advisory committees. This is our commitment to being informed by the community who we serve during this time. And I must say, in my recent months as Peel Regional Police Chief, we've committed to change and bolstering the strength that we have here to serve the community with its variety of needs. And this is my commitment to the organization and to the public. With that, you will see a change in emphasis on our approach to modernizing community policing in the months forward, to which I'll be speaking to, as the Mayor alluded to, on traffic safety very specifically, but as well as mental health and addictions, violent crime, and our priority populations. We're also committing to an innovation and technology roadmap, which we'll be releasing, and bolstering our service delivery within the organization from a human rights-centric focus to dealing with our diverse communities and racialized populations. With that, I'd like to speak to the road safety and traffic safety issues that Peel Region is facing. I do want to first acknowledge that this morning we had, at the early morning hours, a serious traffic fatality here in the City of Mississauga, which you may be aware of in the Dundas Street West in Huron-Ontario area, where there was a collision between a cyclist and a tractor-trailer unit. We know that the individual has succumbed, sadly, to his injuries. We are appealing to the public for any information for anybody that was in the area of Dundas Street West in Huron, Ontario, that might have dash cam video or property video that can help us identify the vehicle which did not remain at the scene. That being said, traffic safety is a foremost concern for our community members, the municipality, as well as us as a police organization, particularly during the time of the pandemic and COVID-19, where we know that road safety and traffic safety has become more pronounced with the reduction of motorists on the roadway, as well as the ability for noise coming from motor vehicles to impact the environment, residential spaces, or business community that we have noticed. In the last year, we have seen an increase of about 107% increase in calls for street racing. As we know, driver behavior and decreased amount of vehicles allows for individuals to take advantage of road space. It also allows us to draw attention to the noise that comes from these vehicles. One of two initiatives I'd like to speak to is ERASE, which is eliminating racing activities on streets everywhere. It's the acronym for a project that is done across jurisdictions because we know it doesn't stop at our boundaries. So this involves the Ontario Provincial Police, York Regional Police, and Toronto Police. We're jointly making efforts to enforce prolific street racing, vehicles that take advantage of the open roads, and as well as modifications to vehicles. Part of this involves focusing on specific drivers, using air support, including the helicopters from our other agencies, as well as drone support. We have laid approximately 18 criminal charges in this last few months, 414 traffic offenses, and investigated 1,600 vehicles as a result of this project. And I must highlight, this is in addition to what our officers in the general divisions are doing from a traffic enforcement standpoint. And this raises the issue that from a public health and a health and safety standpoint, traffic and motor vehicle collisions is a concern to us. We've had, year to date, approximately 20 motor vehicle fatalities in the region of Peel. And just to highlight that, in 2019, the total number of fatalities was 23. This is a concerning factor for us. We know that speed is a contributing cause for most of our fatalities. We implore the public to make sure that they drive safely, especially watch their speeds. If they do see motor vehicles that are driving dangerously, whether it be impaired or careless driving or reckless driving, to call our non-emergency or emergency numbers. There's ways to report that. One specific initiative that we've began as of July 1st has been entitled Project Noisemaker. And Project Noisemaker focuses on the environmental impact that noise has on the wellness of our community. And this specifically is zero tolerance and strict enforcement for modifications of exhaust and exhaust systems on vehicles. We're encouraging motorists that have modified their vehicles to revert back to the way the vehicles came to them. If there are factory settings that have been changed, we're asking them to do that. This will result in a Highway Traffic Act enforcement within the region of Peel and in here in the city of Mississauga. These are some of the efforts that we're committing to ensure that the safety of our roadways remains paramount. This, along with other community safety issues, is a priority for me as chief and Peel Regional Police Service. Our members are committed to making sure that this is a safer community together. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I want to close by acknowledging that our work is never done to build a more tolerant, inclusive, and equitable city. A city where everyone sees themselves reflected in our institutions and in our leadership. And this requires changes to those very institutions, including right here in the city of Mississauga and within Peel Police. And we are committed to doing just that. Change is a good thing. It's often difficult. We need to ensure that our institutions are reflective, responsible, and accountable to the people they serve. And as mayor and as a member of the Police Services Board, I will continue to work with Chief Nish and Peel Police to put safety and security of every member of the community first. The recent and unfortunate deaths of Ijaz Chowdhury, Dondre Campbell, Jamal Franzik are tragic reminders that more work needs to be done. Thank you, and I'm now willing to take questions from the media.
Mayor Crombie, your first question comes from Ashley Newport from Mississauga. Ashley, please go ahead.
Hi, Mayor Crombie.
Ashley?
So I know you had mentioned earlier that enforcing the new mandatory mask bylaw will be a challenging bylaw to enforce, and I'm actually wondering how that enforcement is going to work, because since it applies to indoor spaces such as malls and salons and doesn't apply to parks, are you going to have bylaw officers patrolling shopping centers or indoor spaces, for example? Because I know you said that people can call 311 to launch a complaint, but if someone's already left by then, it would obviously be very difficult to ticket them. So is there going to be any kind of proactive patrolling of certain places for people to, for bylaw officers to either educate or potentially fine someone who's refusing to comply?
It's a good question, Ashley. Thank you. I think we'll take the same approach we did during the emergency orders when we were asked to stay home and stay apart. Our bylaw enforcement officers will largely be their role will be one of education. When they see an infraction, they'll speak to those individuals. But as I said, we won't be proactive in that way unless we have those weekend blitzes as we did during the height of the epidemic. So people can call 311 and report these sorts of infractions, but at the same time, it's all of our responsibilities to ensure that the rules, the guidelines are followed. Stores will have the right to deny entry of anyone not wearing a mask, and of course, if the individual explains that they have a medical condition, allowing them an exemption, they should be permitted to enter.
Thank you. And my next question is for Dr. Lowe.
Certainly.
Go ahead with your question, Ashley.
So I wanted to follow up on something that you've mentioned in the past about Peel advocating to the province for isolation hotels. I know that in the past few days, Toronto Public Health has mentioned it too. I was wondering if there's been any progress on that file, just because, you know, you've mentioned that community spread in Peel, more so in Brampton than in Mississauga, but that one thing that's still driving it a little is households where it's impossible for people to isolate. So has there been any progress on the file in terms of getting isolation hotels or facilities for people who would be unable to distance after testing positive?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Ashley. Similar to Toronto, we have continued to ask Public Health Ontario and our provincial partners for this as an option, at least in terms of controlling spread. Given our declining case numbers at this point in time, it's hopeful that it may not necessarily be a need as much more sort of a want and an option, but certainly I know that we're having continued conversations with our provincial counterparts, and hopefully at the very least would have some sort of framework for isolation housing in place in the event of a second wave. So thank you very much for the question.
Yes, I did. I'm back.
Mayor Crombie, your next question comes from Isaac Callan from The Pointer. Isaac, please go ahead.
Welcome, Isaac.
Facility coming to Mississauga. I noticed that there was another one announced earlier in the year, and there seems to be quite a lot of movement behind film and TV in Mississauga, which I think, particularly at the height of a pandemic, is surprising, welcome, good news. Can you tell us a little bit about how you hope film and TV can expand in Mississauga and how it can contribute to the city's recovery?
So we missed the earlier part of your question, Isaac, but I assume it was the preamble on how important creative industries are to our city and how a great source of revenue generation they are, because that's quite true. And of course, White Studio has just announced a new location, and that would be the 6th film TV station based in Mississauga, and we're very proud of that because, as I said, it's a great source of revenue for us. So when the economy is moving again and film studios are given the okay to proceed, which I think they will be on the list for the phase 3, then we'll breathe a great sigh of relief as they'll be able to reopen and get back to work.
That's right, that was my preamble. My follow-ups were Chief Duriapa.
Thank you. I'll bring the chief to you.
Thank you, Isaac. Please go ahead.
Hey, my question, I guess, is about the police budget. Just normally by this point in the year, we would have had a little bit of a preview of what you were going to bring forward to Regional Council and the Police Services Board come budget season, and the pandemic's meant that that hasn't been the case. So I was hoping to know when we'll have a look at the budget as the public, and if you'll be asking for any kind of increase this year.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Isaac. And you're correct. The timelines of our budget cycle are dictated by as we work through regional council, and as you know, the pandemic's adjusted that for us. So at the moment, we're working with regional council to dovetail with their budget timelines, which have been obviously pushed out to the late fall at the end of the year. So in the interim, though, as we recognize, not only has businesses, small businesses, individuals, the municipality itself been deeply impacted by the pandemic, we too as a police organization have been. And so we are quite alive to the fact that this is not going to be not what it normally have been, but it won't be a normal budget year. And it is going to have an impact. And as stewards of the tax dollars, we've been looking at that very proactively. As you can imagine, most agencies and organizations have used the pandemic to sort of accelerate many efficiencies within the service. So we're using that lens at the moment to see what we can do to reduce any impact. We do see that that the pandemic has changed some of our revenue streams, which have normally impacted the police budget. So we are hoping to have a real good sense of how that looks probably by the third quarter or the fourth quarter of the year as we come back to regional council through the Police Services Board. As you know, it's the Police Services Board's budget, so we will work towards them to look at these efficiencies. And we do know that it'll have an impact on regional budget, and we are being quite sensitive to that, and do anticipate that to be a sincere consideration for what we would have normally come back to. And if the pandemic wasn't here as it was, one of the goals that the Police Services Board and I as a chief had done is to look at opportunities for doing that. As you know, when I came here, I was commissioned with a change mandate, and some of that has been to look at where efficiencies exist within the organization, look at doing things non-traditional, and we're hoping that has a real opportunity to see at least even the reallocation of resources where we would have normally come to the board to say these are needs. So those are all factors being considered, and at this point, I'm not able to pull that into. It'd be too early given really not knowing what the full impact of the pandemic is going to be in the next coming months on us to be able to say what that translates into a budget ask. Thank you, Isaac.
The last question is for Mayor Crombie. Mayor Crombie, Tabish from Red FM has a question for you. Tabish, please go ahead.
Good morning, Tabish.
Tabish, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you, Tavish.
Madam Mayor, yesterday Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown announced that city will be mailing around 1 million masks to the residents in addition to the new bylaw making masks mandatory. So I'm just wondering if Mississauga will be doing the same?
No, Tavish, we don't have plans to distribute masks other than on public transit. There will be some available for those who forgot to bring their mask that day and will be reminded to bring one next time. Masks are very accessible today. In fact, I had the opportunity to be picking up a new garden hose at Canadian Tire yesterday and saw that there was masks were in abundant in many places, as are latex gloves today. So we do not have a PPE access issue these days. And they're not an expensive item. Because Canada is now a PPE secure country. We can source them in many places. And of course, I wouldn't want to add any further stress on my budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This concludes today's press conference. On behalf of Mayor Crombie, I want to thank everyone for participating. Our media team will be sharing a link to the video of the press conference shortly. Have a great day and stay well. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.